Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the virtual public meeting for the NMDOT project concerning the Jarales Road, also known as New Mexico Highway 109, grade separation over the BNSF Railroad in Jarales, New Mexico. My name is Jeff Fredine, and I will be your host for the evening. I'd like to start off by thanking everyone for taking time out of your evening to be with us tonight, and for engaging with us in this virtual format. Obviously, we cannot meet in person due to COVID-19 concerns, so we appreciate your willingness to engage in this virtual format, and we hope everyone is staying safe and healthy. So a little bit about this format. If you are hearing my voice right now, you are either live streaming the meeting on the web, listening on the phone, or both. This is a little different from a Zoom meeting. You will hear the voices of myself and the design team who are here to answer questions and address comments, but you won't see our faces. We don't have that video capability. We do, however, have a presentation that will play in just a minute that involves both video and audio. But when addressing comments and questions, we have audio capacity only tonight. So if you're wondering why there's no picture of the speaker, please don't worry. Your computer is functioning absolutely perfectly. So after the presentation, we will open up the meeting to comments and questions. And if you would like to comment, you can either use the chat function you should see on your computer screen. Just type in your comment or question. Or you can use the phone and speak live during the meeting. If you would like to speak live, please dial *3 to be connected with an operator. They will ask you a few questions about your comment and get you patched into the meeting. Again, that's *3 to ask a question. And if you did not call in this evening but have decided you would like to, that number is 1-877-229-8493, ID code 119649. Again, that's 1-877-229-8493, ID code 119649. So one last request is that when you call in, please dial *6 to provide your contact information so that we can continue to reach out to you with additional information as the project advances. So during regular in-person public meetings, we typically introduce elected officials from the community and their staff and representatives and ask if they have any comments or questions. We can't quite do that in this format, but if you would self-identify when you press *3 or when you enter the comment on the chat line, we will do our best to prioritize your comment or question. With that, I would like to introduce the design team that's here tonight to assist me with comments and questions. We have Justin Gibson, the New Mexico Department of Transportation District 3 engineer, Priscilla Benavides, NMDOT Central Region Design Division, Sandra Chavez, NMDOT Central Region Design Division, Jill Mosier, NMDOT District 3, Paul Christina, BNSF Railway, Hans Erickson, TKDA Engineering Consultants, John Toshik, Ecosphere Environmental Consultants, and we also have a representative available from the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District to address concerns with the potential with the irrigation district and drainage system in the area. And as mentioned earlier, my name is Jeff. Let's see. With that, the goals of our meeting tonight are to present the project purpose and need, the alternatives that were evaluated to address that purpose and need, the recommended alternative, and to request input from you, the community and stakeholders. And at this point, I think we're ready to play the video presentation. And again, the presentation will provide a lot of background information on all of these topics, and we will open up the meeting to questions and comments after the presentation. You can provide comments or questions by dialing *3 or entering your comment in the chat function. Could we start the video at this point?
Welcome to the public involvement virtual meeting for the New Mexico 109 Jarales Road Railroad Grade Separation Project. The proposed project is being co-sponsored by the New Mexico Department of Transportation, or the NMDOT, and the BNSF Railway, who will provide the majority of funding. This is the second public meeting for the project, and the purpose of this presentation is to provide a summary of the Phase A-B report, focusing on the preferred alternative, and to request your input. The topics we will cover in the presentation include project location and history, study process, previous public involvement, existing and future conditions, purpose and need, preliminary alternatives and analysis, refined alternatives and analysis, and recommendations. The proposed project is located at the east end of BNSF's Boleyn Yard, where New Mexico 109 currently crosses 3 mainline tracks via an at-grade signalized crossing. The BNSF intends to construct up to 8 additional tracks at this location. Due to concerns regarding existing delays and increased vehicular and rail traffic, the BNSF and the NMDOT have agreed that a grade-separated crossing is appropriate at this location. The project is being developed using the NMDOT's location study procedures. Phase A is the initial evaluation of alternatives, where we identify existing conditions, project purpose and need, and possible design alternatives to address needs, and obtain public input. Phase B is the detailed evaluation of alternatives, those that appear to have merit, and selection of a preferred alternative. The BNSF, in partnership with the NMDOT, prepared a combined Phase A-B report for this project, and we are presenting the findings with this presentation. The next steps are Phase C, the environmental documentation, and Phase D, the preliminary design of the preferred alternative. The NMDOT will manage the project going forward and has selected an engineering consultant, Wilson & Company, to complete the necessary design work. An initial public meeting was held in June 2019 at Gil Sanchez Elementary School in Jarales with over 100 participants and many good questions and comments. Some of the topics included a suggestion for a new alternative that extends north of Alternative D, widespread support for the project, concerns about trains blocking the existing roadway, concerns about changes in the community and other environmental issues, right-of-way and relocation questions, questions about access to property, and preference or opposition for certain alternatives. The study process includes an analysis of existing and future conditions. New Mexico 109 is a 2-lane north-south major collector road that provides connectivity between the city of Boleyn and Jarales. The existing road has 2 11-foot travel lanes with 1 to 2 foot shoulders. Current traffic is estimated to be 1,759 vehicles per day with 6% heavy trucks. The posted speed limit is 40 miles per hour. Existing usage includes police, fire, and emergency services, truck traffic from nearby industry, bicycles and pedestrians, commuters, and local traffic from numerous properties and side roads, including agricultural vehicles. Although daily traffic varies, the data show an average of 90 trains per day, some of which are nearly 2 miles long. Vehicles currently experience delay as trains cross the highway. In the future, 2040 forecasted volumes are estimated at 2,184 vehicles per day, a 24% increase. As mentioned, BNSF intends to construct up to 8 additional tracks and introduce 16,000-foot-long trains in lieu of the current 10,000-foot-long trains. These additional tracks and longer trains would cause additional delay. For these reasons, the need for this project is at an all-time high and is supported by the community. Part of the NMDOT's project development process is to define purpose and need. The purpose of this project is to provide a safe, uninterrupted route for pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular traffic across New Mexico 109 while accommodating current and future rail operations. The specific needs are based on the following. Physical deficiencies include shoulders that are not adequate for pedestrians and bicycles. Safety is an inherent concern for road rail at-grade crossings. Though the past crash rate is moderate, 5 vehicle train accidents have occurred in the past 10 years. Travel demand and congestion will be impacted with growth in rail operations and the addition of tracks. Delays on New Mexico 109 can significantly impede response times for emergency services. Access relates to driveway and cross-street spacing, which currently exceeds NMDOT standards and can affect safety and traffic operations. System connectivity between areas to the north and south is restricted by current conditions, and future expansion plans would increase this problem. To address these needs, 6 overpass alternatives were developed during Phase A of the study, in addition to the no-build option. These include A, 70 feet west of existing New Mexico 109, B, in line with the existing roadway, C, 70 feet east of the current alignment, D, 750 feet to the west, E, 500 feet east and following a portion of Trujillo Road, F is 600 feet west of New Mexico 109 on an extended north alignment that was added as a result of input at the previous public meeting, and G, the no-build alternative. Each of the alternatives was developed according to the NMDOT and American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, or AASHTO, standards. The posted speed would be 40 miles per hour, as currently exists, and the roadway and bridge would have 2 12-foot lanes and 2 shoulders, a minimum of 5 feet wide, to accommodate bikes, pedestrians, and farm equipment. The bridge approaches would have a combination of retaining walls and/or earthen embankments. For a sense of scale, the bridge deck itself would be approximately 38 feet above the existing road. Access to property would be maintained through reconnected local streets and existing Jarales Road. In Phase A, an initial screening level evaluation was completed to eliminate alternatives that were not feasible or inferior to other alternatives. The objective was to review the major differences between alternatives on a qualitative level. Therefore, detailed evaluations were not performed during this phase. The evaluation criteria are shown on this slide. All of the alternatives except the no-build option address the purpose and need. Structure impacts address residential relocations. Utility impacts primarily relate to overhead power lines in the project area. Drainage impacts concern the need to construct, replace, or extend irrigation facilities. Impacts to local roads consider whether access would be restricted during or after construction. Impacts to rail service consider effects on rail operations during and after construction. Public input reflects the comments for or against specific alternatives. The evaluation criteria were applied to each alternative, and based on these ratings, alternatives were eliminated or advanced. This table summarizes the initial alternatives evaluation. 3 alternatives were not recommended for further evaluation. These include Alternative A because of impacts to overhead power, a moderately high number of relocations, and no public support. Alternative B because it would require New Mexico 109 to be closed during construction and requires the maximum number of relocations. And Alternative F because of its considerable length compared to the other alternatives and large right-of-way acquisition that impacts future BNSF operations. The alternatives recommended to be advanced in the detailed evaluation include alternatives C, D, and E. In the refined analysis, conceptual roadway and structure plans were developed for each alternative recommended for further evaluation. The plans included the New Mexico 109 alignment and profile, bridge length, property impacts, embankment and retaining wall limits, drainage features, local road connections, existing roadway removals, and geotechnical considerations. The alternatives are shown on the following slides. Alternative C would require a 330-foot three-span bridge with embankments on the east side and retaining walls on the west side. The Belen Waste Ditch crossing would be extended, and the Arroyos Ditch and Sanchez Drain crossings may need to be extended or replaced. Existing New Mexico 109 would be reconnected at Audra Court, and Duke Road would reconnect to the new alignment at a relocated intersection. North of the tracks, Alternative C would reconnect to existing New Mexico 109 at Gallegos Road. This alternative would require a total of 13 relocations and 13 acres of right-of-way. The estimated cost including right-of-way and relocations, is $27 million. Alternative D would require a 584-foot-long, 6-span bridge on a curved alignment. It would be constructed on embankments in the open areas and retaining walls in developed areas. New crossing structures for the Arroyos Ditch and Belen Waste Ditch and an extension of the Sanchez Drain crossing would be required. West of the new alignment, access roads would be constructed for adjacent properties. Existing New Mexico 109 would be reconnected at Trujillo Road. North of the tracks, existing New Mexico 109 and Gallegos Road would reconnect to the new alignment. Alternative D requires 4 relocations and 30 acres of right-of-way. The estimated cost is $26.6 million. Alternative E requires a 284-foot-long, 3-span bridge. It would be constructed with embankments in vacant land and retaining walls near the tracks to avoid relocations. New or extended crossing structures would be needed for the Arroyos Ditch, Sanchez Drain, and Belen Waste Ditch. Trujillo Road would be widened and slightly realigned, and existing New Mexico 109 would be reconnected to Trujillo Road. The northern section of Trujillo Road would be connected to a new alternative E alignment via a new road. Existing New Mexico 109 and Gallegos Road would reconnect to the new alignment on the north side. This alternative requires 8 residential relocations and 20 acres of right-of-way. The estimated cost is $30.2 million. Each alternative was subject to a refined evaluation of engineering and environmental factors, as shown here. The evaluation was similar to the initial alternatives in terms of purpose and need, structure, utility, and drainage impacts, impacts to local roads and rail service, and public input. In the refined analysis, the metric for structure, inspection, and maintenance is bridge length. Longer bridges would require greater effort to inspect and maintain and are rated accordingly. Right-of-way feasibility was estimated by summing the area of impacted property. Environmental and community impacts primarily include relocations, changes in access and property use, noise, visual impacts, and cultural resources. Access impacts address the number of intersections that would not meet NMDOT access management requirements. Costs are based on standard NMDOT construction pay items and also include estimates for relocations and property acquisition. The study team's rating with these criteria identified alternative C as the preferred alternative. Key factors are shown here. In terms of structure maintenance and inspection, Alternative D's bridge length and complexity is a critical disadvantage when compared to Alternative C and E. The required right-of-way to construct Alternative C is less than Alternatives D and E. Drainage impacts. Alternative C requires fewer improvements to irrigation facilities than either Alternative D or E. In terms of impacts to local roads, Alternatives C and D both can be largely constructed offline. Alternative E would require reconstruction of Trujillo Road with associated impacts. Alternative D impacts rail service. It requires relocating an existing signal bridge within the rail yard, creating a problem for maintenance of rail operations. The pier locations for alternatives C and E allow construction outside the existing tracks. Public input included strong support for a new grade-separated crossing and included a mix of preferences between the various alternatives. Alternative C stood out as having the highest number of positive comments. These are the next steps. The NMDOT has accepted the findings of the Phase A-B study and is finalizing the report. We would like to hear your input by September 1st, 2020. The next steps will include preparing environmental investigations, including natural and cultural resource surveys, studies of community concerns such as visual impacts, noise, property access, and relocations, and other studies as needed. We will then prepare an environmental document under the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, which may be a categorical exclusion or an environmental assessment. The next steps also include preparing preliminary design documents, which will refine the engineering to a 30% level. This more specific information will allow discussions with property owners about right-of-way needs and relocations. Final design and construction will follow and are anticipated in late 2021. We want to thank you very much for your interest and willingness to participate and provide input in this virtual meeting format. Contact information, where to send your comments, is given below, including a link to the NMDOT District 3 website, which includes a copy of the Phase A-B report and will continue to provide updated project information. Again, comments are due by September 1st, 2020, and thank you again.
All right, folks. My understanding from some of the reports we've gotten is that there were some technical difficulties in rolling out that video. We are looking into that as we speak. And I apologize for the delay. My understanding is there might have been some audio, but the video did not play past the introductory slide that explains the starting time of the meeting. We are looking into that now. The link folks should be using should be access.live/NMDOT. I am double checking that link right now.
Not really. Nobody can see it. They're scrambling.
That does show up as the New Mexico Department of Transportation live streaming events. That should kick in to the presentation, and we are looking into the reasons for that now, and when we get it rebooted, we can play this presentation again. Again, that link is access.live/NMDOT, and we are doing everything we can to get that back up and running. In the meantime, I see we have a few questions that have come up beyond people pointing out that the video was having trouble. Ignacio Gallegos from Albuquerque would like to know what Alternative C is exactly, since he hasn't been able to see the alternative list or see the video. Why don't I bring Ignacio on live to ask his question, and then we'll have our technical specialist, Hans, with the Phase B report available to answer his question. Ignacio, if you can hear me, you should be live now.
Okay. I think I heard a beep. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You are live.
Okay. So I'm the property that I have is in the sort of teardrop shape where the existing 3 tracks are on the south side and the older auxiliary tracks are on the north side, and then it kind of teardrop shapes into the funnel that becomes the road, the track against that crosses the river. And I'm curious if there are plans to increase the number of bridges across the river. And since it sounds like part of the, I think the alternative C is the one that basically just goes right through my land, or my family's land, I suppose. It's not just me, but I think alternative C is the one that goes through there, if I remember properly. And I'm wondering what the plan is for. I heard up to eight new tracks in today's presentation, and in the last presentation back at the elementary school, I heard 4 new tracks. What's the plan for the number of tracks, and what impact will that have on the alternative?
Let's see. Hans, can you speak to that, or potentially Paul?
Yeah, so this is Hans. I guess I can start out. And forgive me if I missed some of that. I was trying to scratch down notes with the question that was posed. But I heard a couple of things here. I guess first off, correct, alternative C is the alignment that's positioned on the east side of the existing Jarales Road alignment, in the vicinity of the existing at-grade crossing. The new alignment is proposed about 70 feet to the east of the existing. With the proposed development of the Berlin Yard, yes, there are a number of additional tracks that are being considered. And the number that was quoted here in this meeting might be a little bit different than maybe we heard elsewhere. But depending on the alternate considered, there's a different number of tracks that would need to be crossed. So those, as you can imagine, as you progress further to the west and into the yard, the track alignments start to bifurcate and split, and alternatives such as D and F would be required. Bridges associated with those alternatives would be required to span a greater number of tracks. Specifically at the alternate C alignment, there are, I believe, 6 additional tracks that are being proposed for that specific location. And I believe the last part of the question was regarding a new bridge across the river. And none of the alternatives or scope of the project are considering new structures across.
Okay. Can I have a follow-up too?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So it's my understanding that the new tracks under which the bridge, which will be under the bridge, of course, they're planned to be spread north of the existing street tracks. Is that right? And how much of a how many feet? You've mentioned that the road itself would be 70 feet east of the existing Jarales Road. How far north of the existing railroad track on the south side will the railroad extend?
Can you speak to that as well, Hans? Are you there, Hans? Let's see.
Yeah, I don't hear him either.
I was just making sure he wasn't on mute. He might have dropped off.
Maybe Paul could help with that, with the BNSF side.
Sure. Can you hear me okay? This is Paul, Christina.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Well, thank you for your question, sir. I think I didn't follow all of the directions in that question with regard to where the new tracks are. I think the important point is that whatever structure is constructed will accommodate the future expansion that we anticipate at this location. And so lots of those design decisions are still being made on the BNSF side, and so we'd hesitate to say anything absolute at this point about where or how or when those tracks would be configured, but it suffices to say at this stage that the bridge envelope that is afforded by this project will accommodate whatever the future configuration of those tracks would be.
Okay, so there's no anticipation. Well, I guess the anticipation then is that wherever the bridge span ends is where I should anticipate the tracks ending as well.
I think we're saying the same thing, that wherever the bridge exists, the tracks would go between those two abutments, or the underneath the span that is constructed.
Okay, and I don't want to sort of hold the conversation hostage, but you've answered my questions. I just am curious because that goes directly into the land that I'm holding. So,
Mr. Gallegos, we greatly appreciate your question, and I just got reports that we have connected the link. We had connection problems with the link that was sent out, but if you refresh access.live/NMDOT should bring you back into the meeting presentation. The link should be live, and we will try to run the presentation again. With the visuals and the background, it might provide some clarity.
Thank you.
And, okay, I will take you offline.
Welcome to the Public Involvement Virtual Meeting for the New Mexico 109 Jarales Road Railroad Grade Separation Project. The proposed project is being co-sponsored by the New Mexico Department of Transportation, or the NMDOT, and the BNSF Railway, who will provide the majority of funding. This is the second public meeting for the project, and the purpose of this presentation is to provide a summary of the Phase A-B report, focusing on the preferred alternative, and to request your input. The topics we will cover in the presentation include project location and history, study process, previous public involvement, existing and future conditions, purpose and need, preliminary alternatives and analysis, refined alternatives and analysis, and recommendations. The proposed project is located at the east end of BNSF's Belen Yard, where New Mexico 109 currently crosses 3 mainline tracks via an at-grade signalized crossing. The BNSF intends to construct up to 8 additional tracks at this location. Due to concerns regarding existing delays and increased vehicular and rail traffic, the BNSF and the NMDOT have agreed that a grade-separated crossing is appropriate at this location. The project is being developed using the NMDOT's location study procedures. Phase A is the initial evaluation of alternatives, where we identify existing conditions, project purpose and need, and possible design alternatives to address needs, and obtain public input. Phase B is the detailed evaluation of alternatives, those that appear to have merit, and selection of a preferred alternative. The BNSF, in partnership with the NMDOT, prepared a combined Phase A-B report for this project, and we are presenting the findings with this presentation. The next steps are Phase C, the environmental documentation, and Phase D, the preliminary design of the preferred alternative. The NMDOT will manage the project going forward and has selected an engineering consultant, Wilson & Company, to complete the necessary design work. An initial public meeting was held in June 2019 at Gil Sanchez Elementary School in Jarales with over 100 participants and many good questions and comments. Some of the topics included a suggestion for a new alternative that extends north of Alternative D, widespread support for the project, concerns about trains blocking the existing roadway, concerns about changes in the community and other environmental issues, right-of-way and relocation questions, questions about access to property, and preference or opposition for certain alternatives. The study process includes an analysis of existing and future conditions. New Mexico 109 is a 2-lane north-south major collector road that provides connectivity between the city of Belen and Jarales. The existing road has 2 11-foot travel lanes with 1 to 2-foot shoulders. Current traffic is estimated to be 1,759 vehicles per day with 6% heavy trucks. The posted speed limit is 40 miles per hour. Existing usage includes police, fire, and emergency services, truck traffic from nearby industry, bicycles and pedestrians, commuters, and local traffic from numerous properties and side roads, including agricultural vehicles. Although daily traffic varies, the data show an average of 90 trains per day, some of which are nearly 2 miles long. Vehicles currently experience delay as trains cross the highway. In the future, 2040 forecasted volumes are estimated at 2,184 vehicles per day, a 24% increase. As mentioned, BNSF intends to construct up to 8 additional tracks and introduce 16,000-foot-long trains in lieu of the current 10,000-foot-long trains. These additional tracks and longer trains would cause additional delay. For these reasons, the need for this project is at an all-time high and is supported by the community. Part of the NMDOT's project development process is to define purpose and need. The purpose of this project is to provide a safe, uninterrupted route for pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular traffic across New Mexico 109 while accommodating current and future rail operations. The specific needs are based on the following. Physical deficiencies include shoulders that are not adequate for pedestrians and bicycles. Safety is an inherent concern for road-rail at-grade crossings. Though the past crash rate is moderate, 5 vehicle-train accidents have occurred in the past 10 years. Travel demand and congestion will be impacted with growth in rail operations and the addition of tracks. Delays on New Mexico 109 can significantly impede response times for emergency services. Access relates to driveway and cross-street spacing, which currently exceeds NMDOT standards and can affect safety and traffic operations. System connectivity between areas to the north and south is restricted by current conditions, and future expansion plans would increase this problem. To address these needs, 6 overpass alternatives were developed during Phase A of the study, in addition to the no-build option. These include A, 70 feet west of existing New Mexico 109, B, in line with the existing roadway, C, 70 feet east of the current alignment, D, 750 feet to the west, E, 500 feet east and following a portion of Trujillo Road, F is 600 feet west of New Mexico 109, on an extended north alignment that was added as a result of input at the previous public meeting, and G, the no-build alternative. Each of the alternatives was developed according to the NMDOT and American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, or AASHTO, standards. The posted speed would be 40 miles per hour, as currently exists, and the roadway and bridge would have two 12-foot lanes and two shoulders, a minimum of 5 feet wide, to accommodate bikes, pedestrians, and farm equipment. The bridge approaches would have a combination of retaining walls and/or earthen embankments. For a sense of scale, the bridge deck itself would be approximately 38 feet above the existing road. Access to property would be maintained through reconnected local streets and existing Jarales Road. In Phase A, an initial screening level evaluation was completed to eliminate alternatives that were not feasible or inferior to other alternatives. The objective was to review the major differences between alternatives on a qualitative level. Therefore, detailed evaluations were not performed during this phase. The evaluation criteria are shown on this slide. All of the alternatives except the no-build option address the purpose and need. Structure impacts address residential relocations. Utility impacts primarily relate to overhead power lines in the project area. Drainage impacts concern the need to construct, replace, or extend irrigation facilities. Impacts to local roads consider whether access would be restricted during or after construction. Impacts to rail service consider effects on rail operations during and after construction. Public input reflects the comments for or against specific alternatives. The evaluation criteria were applied to each alternative, and based on these ratings, alternatives were eliminated or advanced. This table summarizes the initial alternatives evaluation. 3 alternatives were not recommended for further evaluation. These include Alternative A because of impacts to overhead power, a moderately high number of relocations, and no public support. Alternative B because it would require New Mexico 109 to be closed during construction and requires the maximum number of relocations. And Alternative F because of its considerable length compared to the other alternatives and large right-of-way acquisition that impacts future BNSF operations. The alternatives recommended to be advanced in the detailed evaluation include alternatives C, D, and E. In the refined analysis, conceptual roadway and structure plans were developed for each alternative recommended for further evaluation. The plans included the New Mexico 109 alignment and profile, bridge length, property impacts, embankment and retaining wall limits, drainage features, local road connections, existing roadway removals, and geotechnical considerations. The alternatives are shown on the following slides. Alternative C would require a 330-foot three-span bridge with embankments on the east side and retaining walls on the west side. The Belen Waste Ditch crossing would be extended, and the Arroyos Ditch and Sanchez Drain crossings may need to be extended or replaced. Existing New Mexico 109 would be reconnected at Audra Court, and Duke Road would reconnect to the new alignment at a relocated intersection. North of the tracks, Alternative C would reconnect to existing New Mexico 109 at Gallegos Road. This alternative would require a total of 13 relocations and 13 acres of right-of-way. The estimated cost, including right-of-way and relocations, is $27 million. Alternative D would require a 584-foot long, 6-span bridge on a curved alignment. It would be constructed on embankments in the open areas and retaining walls in developed areas. New crossing structures for the Arroyos Ditch and Belen Waste Ditch and an extension of the Sanchez Drain crossing would be required. West of the new alignment, access roads would be constructed for adjacent properties. Existing New Mexico 109 would be reconnected at Trujillo Road. North of the tracks, existing New Mexico 109 and Gallegos Road would reconnect to the new alignment. Alternative D requires 4 relocations and 30 acres of right-of-way. The estimated cost is $26.6 million. Alternative E requires a 284-foot long 3-span bridge. It would be constructed with embankments and vacant land and retaining walls near the tracks to avoid relocations. New or extended crossing structures would be needed for the Arroyos Ditch, Sanchez Drain, and Belen Waste Ditch. Trujillo Road would be widened and slightly realigned, and existing New Mexico 109 would be reconnected to Trujillo Road. The northern section of Trujillo Road would be connected to a new alternative E alignment via a new road. Existing New Mexico 109 and Gallegos Road would reconnect to the new alignment on the north side. This alternative requires 8 residential relocations and 20 acres of right-of-way. The estimated cost is $30.2 million. Each alternative was subject to a refined evaluation of engineering and environmental factors, as shown here. The evaluation was similar to the initial alternatives in terms of purpose and need, structure, utility, and drainage impacts, impacts to local roads and rail service, and public input. In the refined analysis, the metric for structure, inspection, and maintenance is bridge length. Longer bridges would require greater effort to inspect and maintain and are rated accordingly. Right-of-way feasibility was estimated by summing the area of impacted property. Environmental and community impacts primarily include relocations, changes in access and property use, noise, visual impacts, and cultural resources. Access impacts address the number of intersections that would not meet NMDOT access management requirements. Costs are based on standard NMDOT construction pay items and also include estimates for relocations and property acquisition. The study team's rating with these criteria identified alternative C as the preferred alternative. Key factors are shown here. In terms of structure maintenance and inspection, alternative D's bridge length and complexity is a critical disadvantage when compared to alternative C and E. The required right-of-way to construct alternative C is less than alternatives D and E. Drainage impacts. Alternative C requires fewer improvements to irrigation facilities than either alternative D or E. In terms of impacts to local roads, alternatives C and D both can be largely constructed offline. Alternative E would require reconstruction of Trujillo Road with associated impacts. Alternative D impacts rail service. It requires relocating an existing signal bridge within the rail yard, creating a problem for maintenance of rail operations. The pier locations for alternatives C and E allow construction outside the existing tracks. Public input included strong support for a new grade-separated crossing and included a mix of preferences between the various alternatives. Alternative C stood out as having the highest number of positive comments. These are the next steps. The NMDOT has accepted the findings of the Phase AB study and is finalizing the report. We would like to hear your input by September 1st, 2020. The next steps will include preparing environmental investigations, including natural and cultural resource surveys, studies of community concerns such as visual impacts, noise, property access, and relocations, and other studies as needed. We will then prepare an environmental document under the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, which may be a categorical exclusion or an environmental assessment. The next steps also include preparing preliminary design documents, which will refine the engineering to a 30% level. This more specific information will allow discussions with property owners about right-of-way needs and relocations. Final design and construction will follow and are anticipated in late 2021. We want to thank you very much for your interest and willingness to participate and provide input in this virtual meeting format. Contact information, where to send your comments, is given below, including a link to the NMDOT District 3 website, which includes a copy of the Phase AB report and will continue to provide updated project information. Again, comments are due by September 1st, 2020, and thank you again.
All right, folks, I think that time around it went a little better, and I would like to just apologize for the technical difficulties and just to thank everyone for your patience. We know this is a very important project for the community. We take it very seriously, and dealing in these new formats in these challenging times, it requires a little bit of patience and understanding from all of us. I think we've worked through the technical concerns with this, and again, I appreciate your patience. And while the video has been playing, we've had several questions queue up on the chat line, and we have noted the participation of County Commissioner David Hyder and State Senator Greg Baca, and we have one active caller on the line. I would like to take the caller. They've been on hold for a little while now, and after that we will take the questions that have been posted so far. So again, thanks folks. I think we are all up to speed now, and caller, you should be live. Could you state your name and question, please?
Is it me, Celedonio Garcia?
Yes, it is, Mr. Garcia. You are on the air.
Okay, I live on 522 Jarales Road, and this is the first meeting or anything I've been to. And I just wanted to let everybody know that, you know, option D goes right through my property and everything, and I'm more than willing to work with the railroad, the road department, whoever it is, to get this bridge done, because the bridge needs to be done here. And you know, that's really my input, you know, that I'm willing to sell, do whatever it takes to get this bridge done. And I think option D would be the better way of going, because there'd be less structures, and you know, that's what I think, you know. That's really it. That's really all I got.
Well, that's excellent. Thank you very much for the input and the comment, Mr. Garcia. It has been noted, and we appreciate your participation this evening.
No problem. Thank you.
Sorry. And now we will go to the questions on the chat board here. Francine Baca says, I live right before the second set of railroad tracks. Would adding more tracks affect us any? The vibration from our homes and the noise. I think I would like to have Hans, I believe you're back online with us, address that. Ms. Baca lives near the second set of railroad tracks and is wondering about impacts due to vibration and noise.
So I believe the second set of railroad tracks, I'm assuming that's the grade separation that we're speaking about in the meeting today. I would say that if the no-build alternative were implemented and the additional tracks incorporated via an at-grade configuration, I would expect additional vibration and noise in the vicinity of that location. I would expect any alternative that implements a bridge feature to separate the vehicular traffic from rail would improve the condition.
John Toshik, do you have any additional input on the noise and vibration analysis?
I'm not entirely familiar where the property, Francine Baca's property is, but the project would result with the roadway being relocated on a bridge over the railroad tracks. The noise and vibration from the railroad wouldn't change except as a result of the increased number of tracks. The roadway noise would be raised above the current elevation of the road. So it's likely that homes that are near the road now would experience less noise because the roadway would be raised, and the structure to raise it would provide a buffer to those homes that are next to the road. Now, it's likely that the raised structure and the traffic on the raised structure would project noise out further into the community. However, the traffic volumes on New Mexico 109 are fairly low, and it's it's not traffic noise. I think that is the issue. When we complete the environmental document in the next phase, we will do a detailed study of noise in the area, and at that point we'll have some numbers and values for how noise will change.
That was what I was wondering. That's what I was thinking, John. Additional analysis will be occurring during the environmental study. Thank you. Stephen Ferguson is asking, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just said you bet. Thanks.
Oh, sure. Stephen Ferguson is asking about any options or opportunities to fast track this project. My understanding is that the project is on a fairly aggressive schedule, but perhaps Jill could speak to the scheduling side of this a little bit.
Absolutely, I will do my best. We are expediting this as much as we can. We have already gone out to RFP and hired the consultant to proceed with the design, the preferred alternative from this point forward. They have presented a aggressive schedule. They have presented a way to combine and run concurrently as many tasks as they can. The big thing, I guess the critical path on this is what the words I'm looking for. The critical path is for the right-of-way, just because the right-of-way process does take time, the mapping, the survey. We want to make sure that we are doing the adequate public outreach, not only like this, but with the impacted property owners as we move forward. I know Priscilla's on here. I don't know if anybody from the consultant, Wilson and Company, has a way to respond to this and what we're doing to expedite this so that we can get this built sooner than later, as we know that the community really is looking forward to this project to help relieve the delays they experience with the at-grade crossing currently.
Great. Thanks, Jill. And I understand Priscilla can add some additional information?
Yes, I can go ahead and add some information. Wilson and Company, unfortunately, was unavailable to attend due to the limited number of seats we had as hosts. So I can speak on their behalf as I'll be working with them closely. Jill hit the nail on the head. The critical path is right away, and most importantly is cooperation and coordination with all the stakeholders, from BNSF in timely reviews on our milestones, working collaboratively with us on, preliminary engineering tasks, also working with the public and the right-of-way, as Jill mentioned, and of course utilities. Utility relocation is going to be another challenging task that we need to work with. But as Jill stated earlier, we are on a very aggressive schedule. We are doing everything we can to parallel our tasks so we can complete this as soon as possible.
Thank you, Priscilla. And let's see. Ignacio is asking if there is any consideration of placing a Jarales rail runner commuter rail station so farmers can get their produce to market in Albuquerque and Santa Fe. I'm not sure the best person to answer that. I know, well, why don't we start with Paul, if he has any input onto the rail service in the area?
Sure, this is Paul. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, thank you for the question. Right now, we do not have any indications from Rail Runner that they are seeking commuter service. But certainly, if there is interest there, that is a conversation that we can have separate and aside from this one.
Sure. And is there anybody on the DOT side who could add input into that? My takeaway is we really don't know the specifics of the Rail Runner service or any plans to expand it at this point. But is there anyone who can add to that?
Hi, Jeff. This is Justin Gibson.
Hey, Justin.
Yes, just from the district's perspective, that there's no current plans for expansion of any of the current stations that Rail Runner has. The closest one right now would be the station that's at the 309 station that's in Central Belen.
Thank you. Appreciate that clarification. Eugenio Padilla is asking, alternative D would be the most sensible alternative because it only takes out 3 structures. I would like Hans to provide a little bit of background. We understand all the alternatives have some pros and cons, but could you speak to the concern that alternative D takes out fewer structures than other alternatives?
I guess I would agree that that's why we looked at alternative D, why it was developed to try and identify an option that would minimize the overall impact on the structure takes required for the project. So the statement is absolutely correct that there are 3 structure takes required with this one. Obviously, the process that we've engaged here is to identify and balance a number of different metrics and criteria to identify the preferred alternative. And certainly one of the strong points associated with alternate D is that it does have a limited take.
And Mr. Padilla is also mentioning that there is property on the east side of Jarales Road to accommodate the alternative. It wouldn't have any impact to any structures that have been distorted. BNSF has plenty of property to back new access and highway. I think he's referring to BNSF property being able to accommodate the alternative to the, I guess that'd be the west side. Paul, could you provide any additional background on BNSF development plans or anything, any reason or the reasons for preserving that right-of-way in that area?
Sure, I will. Can you hear me okay? Sorry to keep asking.
Yes.
I just don't have any other feedback. Thank you. So the right-of-way that BNSF has in this area really and throughout our whole network is essential for our ability to serve our customers in the future. And our customers are the shippers that move freight by rail that allow really the fabric of our country to operate, be it consumer products that move in shipping containers or individual merchandise, cars, or industrial products and those sorts of things. And so because of the nature of our network and the position of it, our right-of-way really is irreplaceable and invaluable. And we do not know what the future business needs of our customers and really the nation will be, and how our network will need to grow and expand to accommodate it. And for that reason, we are unable to offer any additional right-of-way to accommodate any alternative other than the one that has been selected.
Thank you for that background, Paul. Let's see, I would like to take a caller who's been on the line and waiting.
Hold on, Jeff,
I'm
real
sorry?
quick before we go to the caller. Sorry to interrupt, but I just because we do have a limited number of people that could call to help host, I wanted to add for the earlier question about the commuter stop at Jarales. I did get some information from our Railroad Bureau, and they are not able to transport freight on a passenger train. So if the question about being able to get produce and everything up to Albuquerque or to Santa Fe by having a Jarales stop, the rail runner cannot transport freight on the passenger train.
Thank you, Jill.
Yes, sorry about interrupting. Go ahead to the caller.
No, that's wonderful. It's a pretty informal process we have going here, and the goal is to provide the most clarity and thorough answers that we can to people's comments and concerns. So we appreciate the clarifications. I'd like to take Norbert Sanchez's phone call. He has a question about the number of tracks. And
yes, hello,
Norbert, you should be live now. Could you ask your question, please?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Okay. Yes, the question that I have is for really Burlington Northern, I guess. One of the gentlemen that asked a question earlier asked for the number of rails that would be crossing under the bridge. And today there's 3 sets of railroad tracks that are in that area. It kind of sounded like maybe there may be as many as 6 more, for a total of maybe 9, but at least in the presentation it says 8 new tracks. Anyway, my question to Burlington Northern is there a place that I can go to get answers as to what they exactly plan to do? I live directly south of the railroad tracks, and west of there I would be impacted by your version D, but really my impact has already been profound by what has already happened with the new sets of 5 tracks or whatever are out there now. I mean, they've moved steadily towards my house. I have people walking back there at times with these, and we have 3-mile trains where we're running water under the tracks, and sometimes having to go around through Belen to open our water. So obviously we're wanting the bridge. The question is, how is this bridge going to impact me, and how are the changes that Burlington Northern is proposing to do are going to impact me? That's the question that I've got. And is there a place that I can go get answers for those questions? So specifically plans, that kind of thing that would exist.
Paul, are you able to speak to that question?
Sure, I can give it a shot, and then Hans, feel free to clean me up as you are engaged in the design discussions that we have ongoing. So first, I appreciate your question, Mr. Sanchez, and I think the presentation speaks accurately as to what's contemplated for track construction at the moment, and to note, as we did with the previous questioner, that whatever structure is built would be able to accommodate the future expansion that we have. Now, in terms of the timing and the configuration, what exactly that looks like, we do not have details on that to share at this time, or drawings to be shown. As I said before, we construct our network in response to the demands of our customers. And so really the timing and implementation and what that looks like, it really depends on the economic environment. And as everybody has experienced over the course of the last 5 months or so, that we're in a pretty volatile time. And so to speak today as to exactly what the configuration will be or where it would look like, what it would look like, may be premature. What we can say, though, is that when the time comes, that we'll make those, we'll draw those plans, and then we'll take on the construction that we need to in order to serve our customers. And so, to the extent that you want to remain apprised of that, you can go to bsf.com and continue to ask those sorts of questions. And as the information becomes available, as we're able to share it, if we're able to share it, then it can be given at that time. But those details are not available at the moment. Hans, anything to add there from a detailed design perspective?
Nope. I think that's a fair assessment.
Okay.
Well, thank you both.
Okay, Jeff, before you go on, can I just make one point of distinction, please?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I appreciate all of the comments and the questions, and I think that this is great. It's very engaging. I remember the public meeting we had last year was very much the same way, and I'm grateful for the amount of representatives we have hosting this meeting, and that we do have BNSF and their consultant to help. So there really is two different projects here. So while we can address the BNSF track expansion, or BNSF is on here and can address those questions, the DOT portion of this is for the grade separated, where we're partnering and working cohesively with BNSF to build this grade separated, to build the new bridge to go over, to take New Mexico 109 over the track expansion. So while they are kind of related projects in response to each other, they are two separate projects.
Thank you, Jill.
That's a great point. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that is an important distinction. And thank you for the call, Mr. Sanchez. We appreciate that. Ignacio is asking, current speed limit is 30 miles per hour, not 40. It looks like he is referring to an earlier post. We'll come back to that. Jera Cordova, he thanks us for the presentation and appreciates the information and support for the project. And I apologize here. I'm just looking up some background information. Well, we will move on. We appreciate the comment, Mr. Cordova. And Miguel Hidalgo has a comment. Thanks for the presentation. The preferred alternative C seems to be the best choice with a direct route regarding safety and costs. Thank you for that comment, Miguel. Julia Bindinger, I apologize for that pronunciation, is asking what the funding source or sources are for this project. Jill, that sounds like a good question for you.
It is a good question for me. Thank you, Jeff. Currently, as I indicated earlier, we are working with BNSF on this project. BNSF started this project probably about a year and a half ago or so, and they funded the study, and were working with us, and now the baton is kind of being handed off as we take the project from here. So the project is being funded partially by BNSF and partially by the state. I'm estimating right now, without having a good cost estimate, that it's probably about a 50-50 split, maybe a 60-40, that it's being funded by BNSF, and we are thankful for their participation with the funding. And the rest is being funded with state dollars. There are not any federal funds in this project at this time.
Thank you, Jill. Let's see, we are up to Isidro Molina is asking where we can get a drawing on option C with more detail. That is a great question, and if you go to the DOT website, you can download the draft Phase AB report, which the presentation was based on, and that address it's a bit of a long one. It is on the advertisement for the meeting. If everyone has their pens ready, I'll read out the address: dot.state.nm.us/NMDOT projects, all one word. You can also just go to the DOT webpage, their homepage, click on the three bars in the upper right corner, and then a ribbon will come across the screen, and you can click on DOT projects and find it from there. But you should be able to access the Phase AB report, which was the basis for tonight's presentation, and that should have additional detail on all of the alternatives that were considered and the evaluation criteria.
Jeff, do we have a slide that shows that?
Oh,
that we
thank
could
you,
put up for everybody?
We do. I hope we do in the slide. I'm not sure now that I think of it. Yes, we do. It is on slide 21, the last slide. Could we bring that up? I don't have a visual on my side. Oh, I think it just came up. The link at the bottom, I believe, is to this specific project, and that can provide you with additional information. So thank you for that question, Julia. I'm sorry, that was Isidro. Joseph Mascarena is asking, when would the process start to acquire necessary properties needed to start the project? That is an excellent question, and I think that is a Priscilla or Jill question. Could either of you speak to that?
Yes, I'll go ahead and take that. So we are going to be starting with survey of the project and the properties. You all should be seeing a survey crew out there potentially as early as next week. They're going to be identifying property markers, right-of-way limits. It's going to be it will take a couple of months to do the field survey and then obviously put it into a map. And along with that, we will parallel the efforts in the 30-year title research that is required for us to purchase right-of-way. So you will see activity out there as early as next week with survey. Title and appraisals will be starting in a couple of months, but probably most importantly, you property owners that will be affected, you will be getting personal visits. I'm not sure how. We haven't figured out how the property owners that are affected will be visited by the design team, but individuals who are affected will be coordinated with either virtually or in person or somehow. We'll figure that out as we go along. But you will be contacted, I'd say, by October, November, so we can start those discussions and we can accelerate that right-of-way process.
Thank you, Priscilla. And I think that relates to a question Juan Jimenez had about if his property was affected. And Juan was asking the question in Spanish, and I would suggest that he can reach out to the email address for the project, pardon me, which I was just trying to find the slide for that. It is Jarales@parametrics.com. And if he sends an email request, we can reach out to him to see where his property is and discuss the effects and have Spanish language translation available if needed. But thank you for that comment as well, Juan. And Ignacio was correcting a slide in the presentation that we said the current speed limit was 40 miles per hour. The speed limit is actually 30 miles an hour. Is what Ignacio is correcting. Let's see, when would the project? Will Stephen Montiel is asking, will NMDOT be adding state or federal funds to the project to make the project whole? I believe there is currently $14.5 million programmed in the TIP and STIP. Jill, I believe you spoke to that question a little bit earlier. Is there any additional clarification you could provide?
Steve's just my buddy over at the Mid-Region Council of Governments. We work with them whenever we put these projects together, whenever we're doing the funding. They're also, a really great resource, and I can't speak to that enough for public involvement on their behalf as well. But yes, we will be programming the additional state dollars. We wanted to get through this public meeting and start getting a preliminary cost estimate together so that we know how much additional state dollars we're going to be programming. We've already talked to the chief engineer, and he confirmed that the state will be covering the difference from the initial $14.5 million to whatever we need for the construction right-of-way utility process.
Thank you. Appreciate that additional information. Michael Vogel, and I apologize for that pronunciation, Michael, is asking, what is the expected drop in property values for those of us south of the tracks and west of 109? Hans, could we start off with you? Was that addressed in the Phase AB analysis at all?
An expected property drop was not addressed. I think I'd solicit a response on that one from somebody more familiar with that specialty.
All right. He's asking about how the project could affect property values for those of them south of the tracks and west of 109. We may need to circle back to that question. And then he is also asking, what will be the roadbed elevation, 60 to 100 feet south of the tracks? Is that a question for you, Hans?
That one I can answer, yes. It was stated correctly previously. Over the tracks, the profile is about 38 feet. And of course, we have to transition to that elevation as we approach from both sides. I took a quick look here, and we're going to be in the neighborhood of about 35 feet.
Great. Thank you. And Jill, I'm looking on our internal communication here, and it says you can speak to the next question on right-of-way. Are you speaking to Mr. Jimenez's question?
No, that was Priscilla for the one that she did speak to earlier about when the right-of-way process was going to begin.
Right. Okay, sorry about that. The number came up and I didn't see the associated name. Sorry about the confusion there. Let's move along. We have some additional questions going on here. Tiffany Romero Peralta is asking, when looking at the 70-foot expansion, if taking that land renders the property unusable for agriculture, maintaining horses and cattle, will that be taken into account when looking at purchasing these properties? Priscilla, or are you able to address that? It seems to pertain to questions of property valuation and right-of-way negotiations.
Yes, I can briefly touch on that. I'm clearly not a real estate agent or a right-of-way agent, but when the appraisals will occur, the appraiser has to take that into consideration, knowing that this is farming land. It is in their privy to take that into account. If their land will be affected and they're in disagreement with the appraiser, there's a process in countering that appraisal. So it's a matter of negotiations and compromise, I guess, but I'm certain that an appraiser will take into account the value or the loss of that property when providing a fair cost to cure.
Thank you, Priscilla. Rebecca Villanueva is asking for a confirmation that alternative D is out of the question. I would like Hans and possibly some DOT input on that, but my understanding is we are recommending alternative C. The decision is to be finalized after the public meeting, but we are balancing several different aspects, including stakeholder input and right-of-way impacts, engineering considerations, environmental impacts, and several other aspects, and that's how we arrive at a recommended alternative. Is there anything you can add to that, Hans, as far as the selection process?
No, I think you've summarized it perfectly there, Jeff, that we've looked at a number of evaluation metrics, and when all assembled together, the work that's been done thus far anyway has identified alternative C as the preferred.
Okay. Thank you. And is there any additional DOT input on this process? And I think this has kind of been a theme of the evening that's been mentioned before, but this project is in a transitionary period, from some work BNSF did onto a DOT managed project. And so any DOT input into the alternative selection? And I apologize, I didn't call out a specific name there, but all right. I'm going to take that as agreement that the alternatives analysis phase A-B report has a recommendation. We will be finalizing that report after this meeting, and we will be notifying stakeholders of that when the report is finalized. Let's see. Rebecca Gutierrez is asking, how far north of the railroad grade separation will the expanded 12-foot lanes and additional 5-foot shoulders be constructed? Will this stop at the north boundary of Camino de Cristal, which is a private easement, or will this expansion continue north to Reinken? Hans, is that something you can speak to?
Yes, I'd be happy to. And our goal in developing this work has been to try and minimize the footprint of the project overall. And as currently configured for the report, we have stopped all of the project limits south of the Camino de Cristal.
Thank you for that. Steve Ferguson is asking if the bridge is going to accommodate future tracks. How long and what height will it be? Can you speak to that as well, Hans?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think Paul kind of touched on it earlier. That, we did use track configurations for this exercise to accommodate future expansion for BNSF through this corridor and through this facility. So obviously, as we progress further to the west, the existing site gets wider, and so our bridge requirements for those alternatives that are positioned west of Jarales Road correspondingly need to get larger as a result. In terms of length, for C, we were looking at a bridge length of about 330 feet. For alternate D, we were at 584 feet. And for alternate E, we were at 284 feet. All of the bridge crossings need to provide at least 23.5 feet of clearance, vertical clearance to the tracks below. So that places, for all of the configurations, the roadway grade about 38 feet above the tracks. And that'll be consistent for all three alternatives.
Great, thank you. Andrew Sanchez is asking, why can't BNSF service the long trains east of Belen? Some railroad workers were saying Becker was considered to work the long trains. There is also, BNSF is adding 5 more tracks. How far east will the tracks go to the river bridge? Only has 2 tracks. I think they're asking about track connectivity as you expand over the river. Hans, can I ask you to speak to that initially, and perhaps Paul can provide some additional input?
Yeah, I think Paul would be better suited to talk about, BNSF's expansion plans.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the question. So as you can imagine, a network the size of BNSF's and all of the different things that go into a consideration of where investments are made and how to facilitate what sorts of operations is very complex. And so we have a dedicated team of people who evaluate the needs of our network based on the needs of our customers to make these sorts of investment decisions. And at this stage, we find ourselves considering expansion at this location first and foremost. And so certainly, different opinions in the community and in the broader space around when and where and how. But suffice to say, just like we said before, that based on the needs of our customers and the needs of our network to serve those customers, that's really what drives our investment decisions. And so that, in terms of why Belen, that's the answer. And then with regard to where these tracks exactly tie in, I would, Hans, you can weigh in on this if you want to, but I would say probably consistent with what we talked about before, that because of the uncertainty around the timing of these investments and what exactly the scope might be, it may be premature to talk about that. And again, the other important point here is that it's really 2 separate projects. Railroad expansion is one of those. This meeting, however, is really focused on the bridge project, and the timing of that looks much more certain. So we would want to keep our focus on that for now.
Great, thank you for that. And we have a new question. Will the trains stop blowing their horns at the 109 crossing when the bridge is finished?
So I could take that as well. So the train sounds its horn according to FRA regulations every time it reaches an at-grade crossing. So it would stand to reason that if a grade separation replaces an at-grade crossing, that the train would not be caused to blow its horn at that location any longer. However, the train crew reserves the right to sound the horn at any time they feel the need to in order to maintain safe operations, and that could be because of an obstruction on the track or a person or an animal or something to that effect. So we can't say that you will never hear a horn at this location anymore, but the mandate to blow the horn at that grade crossing goes away when the at grade crossing goes away, which this bridge will accommodate.
Great, thank you. And let's see, Mr. Padilla is making a comment that there is plenty commercial property for shipping containers east of the river by the old Canyon Craft. There's a lime company there now. I understand that's a comment concerning the alternative selection and evaluation process. We will certainly note that into the project record and take that into consideration, and we appreciate the comment. We are quickly working our way through the comments on the chat line. We still have 34 video participants. I know this is an important project, and there are a lot of concerned citizens. We would love to hear from more of you. I know there's been a lot of great discussion so far, but please take the opportunity to call in, again, *3 to telephone, call in a question, or place a question on the chat line. And also, if you are not comfortable commenting for whatever reason in this particular format, or you simply think of something after the meeting, please reach out to us. Again, that email is jarales@parametrics.com, or use any of the contact information on the contact slide. If that is still up, I don't quite have a strong visual. Or there is information that on how to contact or comment on the project at the DOT website. But we would love to hear from you. And we've come to the end of the comments as they are currently in the queue. We can give a few more minutes and see what other folks would like to provide another comment or question. We would love to engage with any and all of you. We can just give it a few more minutes here. And again, I apologize for any halting silences. We just we don't want to short anybody's opportunity to provide input on the project. So we'll just stay here for a little while. Steve Ferguson is asking, barring unforeseen delays, how long before the bridge will be open? That is a great question. Why don't we start off with Priscilla on that?
Sure. Thank you, Jeff. Right now, as we stated earlier, we have a very aggressive schedule in design. Clearly, I stated earlier, the success of our design depends upon coordination between all stakeholders, and including property owners and so forth. So right now, we are anticipating design completion by December of 2021, but as the low bid process for the letting, it takes about 4 months to actually see boots on the ground. So we're looking at maybe the spring of 2022 that construction could start. That's starting construction, and then obviously there's going to be a duration for how long it's going to take to build this project. Obviously, we don't have the design in front of us, so we can't get a real good handle on how long a bridge would take, how long this project would take to be built. But at a minimum, you can anticipate at least 9 months to build the bridge. So that'll roughly give you an idea. So I'm looking at maybe the end of 2022.
Great. Thank you, Priscilla. And we have a few other questions coming in, but I would just like to remind folks that the PowerPoint, the narrated PowerPoint presentation, the video presentation that you saw today, will be available on the DOT website at the web address that is listed on the contact slide there. So if you would like to view it again or download the individual slides, you will have that opportunity. Let's see, we have a few more questions coming in. Will there be any additional meetings after the environmental impact study is completed? I believe there will be, but I will let Priscilla confirm that as, speaking to the overall design process.
Yes, thank you, Jeff. Right now, we're anticipating to have an additional public meeting as we, prior to wrapping up Phase C, which is the environmental impact study. So we can anticipate another virtual meeting, and if not, we will definitely have stakeholder meetings, property owner interviews. So we haven't really vetted that out 100%, but we are leaning towards, yes, another public meeting to discuss the findings of our environmental study. Thank you.
Thanks, Priscilla. And Michael Vogrel is saying, thank you for the presentation and thank BNSF for funding the project. He prefers option D, but C makes the most sense. Thank you for that comment, Michael. And S. Padilla is asking, with option C, how many additional feet will be taken from the east and west sides of New Mexico 109? Can you speak to that, Hans?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So it really depends because the cross-section associated with option C or alternate C is going to vary depending on which side you're considering, east versus west. So our goal with option C was to maintain traffic on the existing Jarales Road through construction. So in order to do that, we need to incorporate a retaining wall on the west side. So the overall area or distance that will be taken on the west side will be limited essentially to what the roadway cross section requires. On the east side now, and in order to save a little money, we were planning on using an embankment, just an earthen embankment on the east. And the slope that we were considering there forces the construction limits out, I want to say, on the order of about 120 feet plus or minus. So you're looking, about from the roadway limits that are identified in some of these exhibits, about another 120 feet east of the roadway shown.
Great, thank you.
And that's, I guess I'll state that's relative to the proposed alignment. If you want to benchmark off of the existing, you're probably on the order of about 200 feet plus or minus to the east of the existing roadway center line.
Great, thank you. And let's see, Danny Monet or Monette, I'm not sure of the pronunciation, is asking, will this be recorded to view at a later date? I can actually speak to that a bit. What we will do, we don't have a transcript of every word that's being spoken at the meeting, but we do have a list of the questions and the comments that have been asked. We will provide that into a summary. That, along with the presentation that you saw, will all be part of a meeting summary document that will be included in the project record, and it will be accessible for folks to review upon request. I can't really speak for the DOT, obviously, but I suspect once we get a meeting summary together, we will be posting that on the DOT website. Andrew Sanchez is asking, why can't the BNSF stop the trains further west instead of blocking Jarales? Paul, I think you might be a good person to answer that one.
Sure, and thank you for the question. We require the full utility of all the track that we have there at the location in order to accommodate our operation. And so really stopping trains short of Jarales Road does not allow us to fully utilize the capacity that we've invested in at that location. And so that's the reason we've engaged proactively with the agency and with all of you to develop this project.
Thank you. Ernest Sanchez is asking, has there been a study of homelessness increases or decreases in regards to bridge building on railroads? And if there was an increase in homelessness, who would police the increase in the surrounding community? that sounds like a couple of people might have input into that. Hans, I think I would like to start with you about any potential studies of increases or decreases in homelessness related to development of railroad bridges.
Sure, and I guess I would deflect that question to Mr. Toshik. I think that's more in his area of expertise.
Yes, thanks for the question. We have not done the environmental documentation yet, but typically as part of that, we try and look at social and economic impacts. Questions like, does the project divide the community? Are there economic impacts to property owners and residents? The specific question of homelessness is something that we haven't looked into, but it's something that would fall into that category of socioeconomic impacts, and it's something that we can try and look at. I'm not sure if we can develop, at this point, I'm not sure if we can develop meaningful data that would reflect on that question, but we would certainly evaluate socioeconomic impacts and impacts on environmental justice, impacts on housing and the opportunities for relocating residents, property values, and that sort of thing.
Thanks, John. I appreciate that additional information there. Let's see. Go ahead.
I just was going. No, that's okay. I was just going to add to that in this particular instance, the property that's being spanned by the bridge is BNSF, and I think that with their property and with their operations, that they would have the security in the area for the homelessness. Bridges in general are their own issue with the transient population, as we have seen in other locations. In some areas, yes, it can be problematic with the transients camping under them or in them. But in this location, and I don't want to, say, well, it's a BNSF issue or anything like that, but BNSF has a lot of trains going through there. They have, this would be their right of way, their property under the bridge. So that would be really for them to add to any infrastructure outside of that would be and within the prism of the road is DOT.
Thank you,
this is Paul Christina. I'd like to add something there, if I could.
Absolutely.
So I think what those comments are accurate in that BNSF does have a very robust security standard. We have many eyes and ears on the ground as a result of the train yard operations and a culture that if concerns are raised, be it security concerns, safety concerns, whatever they are, those things are elevated. It's also true that we have a resource protection force that patrols our property at suitable times to deter problems like homelessness. And so I would say that those things are definitely in play here. I would not go so far as to say that BNSF resource protection is responsible for at all times ensuring that there is no homeless person ever in the vicinity of this bridge, but it really is a community effort of which BNSF plays a part, not just on the resource protection side, but also, like I said, with all the eyes and ears that are out and about at all hours of the day and night in this very busy location.
Thank you for that.
And I think I might add that the Department of Transportation in their right-of-way acquisition process, I think as Priscilla mentioned, has a very well-established process to ensure fair compensation and compensation for relocation costs, and it's a process that can be negotiated. So property owners will have an opportunity to participate in the acquisition and the cost of acquiring the property.
Great. Thank you, John. Let's see, we have a few more questions coming in, and it is 8:20. Our format, we are scheduled to go until 8:30, so I would like to make an effort to get through them all. And if there's any lingering question or someone thinks of something after the meeting, you can always send an email to the project email address, again, jarales@parametrics.com, or reach out to the contact information that is on the slide up there. So Danny is mentioning that he wasn't able to get on at the start and was wondering, have you spoke to homeowners in the affected area? I believe the answer to that is we will be doing that throughout the preliminary design and the environmental process. We'll be reaching out to affected property owners, and as John had just discussed, there is a very formal and structured process to go through when the DOT acquires right-of-way. So any affected property owners will have the benefit of that structured process to ensure a fair process. But the outreach to affected homeowners will be ongoing throughout the process. Valencia County Commissioner David Hyder is asking, can the video most missed be emailed to the county for us to share on the county website? And yes, I believe we can send you the presentation that was shown tonight to make sure that's available to you and your constituents. As mentioned a little bit earlier, we will not have an entire transcript of this meeting, but the presentation that was shown, that video, it's actually a PowerPoint with narration on the slides. We can coordinate with your office to get a copy of that over to you, certainly. Henry K. Gavaldone is asking, will you be emailing copies of this PowerPoint presentation? Again, that's related to the question above. We will have this presentation available on the DOT website at the link on the contact slide up there. If you go to the DOT website and look at the current projects, look through District 3, you will find this one, and all of the supporting materials will be there. And Espadilla is saying, living at the end of the project area, which is just north of the track, how much distance would the bearing wall be at the end of the bridge? Hans, can I ask you to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So we'll look at the I'll call it the abutment, but essentially the structure onto which the end of the bridge rests, and that is going to match the width of the roadway, which is, and I'll use round numbers here, about 40 feet wide at the north end.
How much distance would the bearing wall be at the end of the bridge? So that would be the width of the bearing of the wall at the abutment edge of the bridge. Okay.
Correct. Yep.
Great. We have go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. So I was just going to add, and I'll speak specifically for alternative C here, in case we're directing the question towards the retaining wall feature, and that, as I mentioned earlier, is to be used along the west side of the alignment. And that's going to run about 900 to, I'll say, between 900 and 1,000 feet from the end of the bridge, further to the north, and then similarly further to the south to tie down to existing grades.
Great, thank you very much. And we have a few minutes left here. If there are any additional comments, it would be great to hear from more folks. Again, we appreciate everyone's participation this evening. And we appreciate everyone's participation this evening and your patience working through our technical difficulties. There's been a lot of question about right-of-way and effects, and we will emphasize that this will be an ongoing process throughout the project development. Property owners will be contacted directly. Affected property owners will have a fair process for establishing market value and a very defined process for confirming or addressing any concerns with that value. We're open to additional questions about the design or questions about the schedule or anything about the project that folks want. We've got just a few minutes left, and we've still got a fair amount of participants viewing on the line, so we would love to hear from you. We'll just give it another minute or two and see if anybody else can think of an additional comment here.
Jeff, what was that the online callers need to dial if they had a comment or question in the last couple minutes?
That was *3. And thank you for the reminder. Well, folks, it has certainly been a very engaging and active meeting tonight. And I know I've said it before, but I just can't express enough. We appreciate you taking the time out of your night to engage with us. We understand the importance of this project to the community, and we look forward to developing this project with you.
The Access Live event has ended.